Well, lots of other changes in the economy are happening. And, there is a little mini surge in certain countries on COVID again. Although, interestingly enough, the mask mandates were overturned today by a federal judge for the airline industry and for the transportation industry. There was not enough justification for it. And the legislature has to make those rules. So the CDC got overturned by a federal judge. So just today, everybody's lifting their masks and throwing their masks out the window or whatever else they're doing, and with sheer joy. So that's good. Now, China, on the other hand, is in total lockdown right now. And I guess that's, again, a big difference between American society with freedoms and the Chinese society where they're, total control. They can turn, as you had mentioned, Chris, the entire city into a gulag and lock down everything. It's really a shame. But maybe some folks have seen those videos of late at night where they have all the lights on in Beijing, but they hear all the screams from people in their apartment yearning to get out, and people are screaming. It's really quite sad, unfortunately. And they also had been separating kids from their parents. And of course, they put some of those folks back together. But they've also had drones overhead in China telling people that their freedom doesn't matter and they must lock down going forward for a zero COVID policy. So it's been pretty bad over there, really bad, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily a health professional, if you will, but it's interesting to see. I mean, I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier, Brian, that, if you flipped it kind of towards the very beginning, first 6 months to a year of the pandemic, it was almost reversed, where you had America really kind of struggling to grasp it. You had a lot of lockdowns, restaurants closures, things like that. Not as significant as China, just because America is, like you said, Brian, very different. They're very totalitarian. They're going to lock down. But you almost seen it flip. So you saw it flip here. In the beginning, you had China they kind of crushed it, the virus really quick, and they kind of opened everything up. In America, we just kind of slagged through it, and it was just really tough. Now it's going to come back and hit China again. And I think it's really interesting to note, because I think in America, for most of the world, a lot of people got COVID. They either got COVID or they got the shots, the vaccines. So a lot of people got exposure to it one way or the other for the most part, built up the antibodies. A lot of people got it without even knowing. So I feel like now we're getting a lot more strands are a lot more viral, and we're seeing that play out in in America right now. I think it's strand B02 or something, I think is the latest one that it's definitely going through the population, but it's just, I think, showing as a cold, very mild. Most people don't even know they have it. So, which is the ideal. This is an endemic disease. So, whereas China, since they didn't get those immunities or had very little exposure, I think they're bearing more of the brunt of it. So, it'll be interesting. I know just earlier this week, I think China's economic numbers came out and they grew at 4.8% in Q1, which blew away expectations. But it'll be a lot more challenging to keep that momentum going into Q2 with these lockdowns. I mean, you're talking, tens to 20 million people being locked down in cities all over the country. I mean, it's pretty significant. So it's going to be hard to repeat that number. And any number we really get from China, obviously, we take with a grain of salt as well.
Well, and anyone who's a China watcher remembers how they reported a 6% growth every quarter, no matter what. And then they saw it break to 5. Now they're at 4.8. But, the reality is they've shut down 70% of their economy. And when we shut down 40% of our economy in the second quarter of 2020, we saw a negative 32% quarter, negative 32. So I'm not sure how they're at 4.8 when they shut down 70% of their economy. So as Chris said, sometimes the numbers out of China are not believable. And I kind of consider those to be probably not believable either. But nonetheless, they run things the way they do. And there's a big distrust in government in China, but they have total control. But that's also happening here. Now, a lot of this doesn't affect the economy necessarily, but it could over time, depending on how the government uses its power. But there's a big distrust. 2 defendants in Michigan were acquitted of the trying to kidnap Governor Whitmer. It turns out the FBI was involved in it, And it also turns out the FBI was involved in January 6th, the storming of the Capitol, and they were kind of spiking it and causing it to happen. So, many of these things are not necessarily economic, but if the government keeps pushing certain narratives, it could affect the economy. And so that's why we watch it here on the 4-Star podcast. But there's plenty of political shows where you can learn more about those things if you'd like. We just hope that it doesn't lead to major distrust of government, and then the whole economy seizes up if people don't trust the referee. The government is the referee in our business environment, and needs to be a fair arbiter and not take sides and not have positions like that.